Hello. It's good to be back again, and today we'll be showcasing something pretty lit. I'm sure you're looking at my screen and you're wondering, okay, so what's this going to be? Well, we will be building the serverless way today. I found this project in AWS, and I thought it would be cool to record a video on it, showcasing how we can from initial phase building our ID environment, then using that as a way to start the build phase, and then moving from there to the test and all the complete phase, then even hooking up user authentication, using Cognito Amplify to manage that, all the way to having API calls on this particular project. So this will be a complete project. Might be a lengthy video, but trust me, you would love the content. For those who will be trying to get their hands on experience building in AWS the serverless way. Okay, so enough with the chitty chatting, jumping right into the business as usual. So I've got this right here in my Microsoft Visual Studio environment. You can see the application. It's quite a heavy one, got a lot. Then I'll be using this particular account which I've set up in AWS to carry out this task for today. So moving on, first thing, let's build a Cloud9 environment which we'll be using as a IDE for this particular project. So I can just click on create new. We'll give this a name. Let's call this maybe tests dev project. Okay, building the serverless way. Okay, what better name could I give this? Okay, all right, so that's will be the first. Now we have options of creating new EC2 instance, which is what we'll be sticking with for today. Or if we have already something we want to work with, we can actually fine-tune that either via SSH or whatever. And now I'm going to use the T2 micro, pretty much okay for what I have to do today. Okay, then the Amazon Linux 2 is recommended, so I'll stick that as well with that as well. All right, everything all looks good here. I'm just going to click on next, which takes me to the next phase, and that will be reviewing all I've selected, then creating. Now I'm working on the Windows VM environment on my Ubuntu box, so this is not the Mac today. I hope this won't give us issues, but I think it's going to work pretty much smooth because I've also built this to be able to do what I needed to do. All right, so let's wait for this to create the ID, then we'll get back to the fun or the party. Okay, so we've got our environment ready. Now a quick verification will be to just run a few commands, but I'm going to close this and just open up a new terminal, and we will do a quick verification here to see the credentials under which we will be running this cloud IDE, and it's a good way to understand if everything works pretty much fine. So AWS STS, then we can get the color identity. Okay, if that runs fine, we should see the accounts. Obviously I'm going to delete this account once I'm done with this, because I know some of you will be like, all right, user ID, then the Amazon resource name. Okay, all looks good. Now the next phase will be to bring in the static web application into this, which I've shown you from my Microsoft Visual Studio environment. Bringing it into this environment which we have, then start building here. Okay, so let's go ahead with the overview. Now we've got that in a repo. We will clone that in a repo, then we will use AWS Amplify to actually help us rapidly build that environment, and we'll be exposing that, so we'll see what it looks like once we're done building, and we'll make a few changes just to see how easy it is to modify on the fly, and triggering the pipeline to just start the build, and all the way down to making that changes and implementing it even in the production environment. So stick around. We're just starting. Okay, so the first thing we want to do today is for this phase will be to get in the repository which we're required to clone from. So to do that, we're going to use AWS code commits. First, maybe I need to zoom in a bit, but I think you guys can actually see this pretty much okay. Let me just zoom in a bit. Okay, so now it's bold enough. Let's run the command. So we're going to run the command. First, I'm going to clear the screen. we'll do the AWS code commits. I'll be using tab here actually. Create a repository, then we'll give that repository, let's call this the name. Okay, we'll just call this following the project name, wild ride, I think it's RYDES. All right, we'll create a repository. We just did that. Next, we'll clone from the repo, which I showed you on the Microsoft Visual Studio, into this EC2 instance, which we have here running our IDE. So we'll do git clone, then we'll run the command to the link. I think I can just copy the link from my notes to save us some time, and just paste it right there. Give me a few seconds. Okay, so I'll paste this right here. Yeah, thank you. Then we'll clone that repo. Okay, so once we're done cloning the repo, we'll move on to the next phase, change into the directory. Then we'll do a bit of branching, so we can effectively do version control, just like we'll do in a normal environment. So we'll see the AWS, which is what we've cloned. In here, we've got quite a number of stuff. So I'm not sure why this thing is okay, pretty much okay. So next we'll try to do our Git Sub Tree, but first I think we need to install Sub Tree. But I think this will be using the yum package manager. So we'll do sudo yum install git sub tree, and we'll pass in the y flag. Okay, so that will pull and then install. This is pretty much a lightweight stuff, so I'll be careful not to install so much so I don't end up bugging it and it's not able to work fine for us. So after this installation is done, then we're going to do the Git Sub Tree. Let's try and see if we can split this so we can have a version that we can start effectively building on. Once we're done, we'll delete the other one and have that all shipped to production. So we'll do Git Sub Tree. My tab here should work for me. That should be Git. Okay, not sub module. All right, sorry about that. Okay, Git Sub Tree. Oh, I'm surprised it's not in the tab. Okay, we'll have to type that then. Okay, we'll do splits, then we'll do -p passing the resources code, the particular link in repo. Then we'll branch this over to wide view. Okay, that should be good. Then we created the branch. Now from this we'll make a directory and get in on that stuff and start moving our stuff in there and building whatever we're doing there. So let's make directory, then we'll go back, fall into wild, oh my bad, okay, wild, I'm surprised, why is the tab not working pretty much fine? Okay, fall back, wild, right, okay, then we'll change into okay, all looks fine. In here we will git init, initialize this as a git directory, then we'll pull from what we've just made into this. So we'll do git pull, we'll fall back AWS, which is what we have. Then again, specifically that should be wild, right? Okay, great. We'll pull from this. Once we have that pulled, then we will git remote add origin, so we can actually start doing stuff pretty much okay in there. So we'll git remote, our tab is working now, add origin, 5 fingers here, code commits. Okay, the origin will be wild right. All right, all looks good. Then we'll git push, you will just use the origin master. Okay, if that runs fine, then we can now remove the other branch. So we can now remove the other branch. So rm -rf AWS. We'll take this out. We don't really need this anymore. Okay, great. So in here we should have the project or the application. Now we're done with this repository phase. We'll move on to a phase where we'll be doing the deployment. Then after deployment, make some modifications. Then we're now going to the user management for this application. So this might take a while, but again, stick around so we can actually get this thing working for us. All right, so okay, so next let's use Amplify to deploy this. Now Amplify is pretty much that AWS service that is cool to do some rapid deployment. So you can find that just by searching Amplify here. But I already did that to save us some time. Click on Get Started, then host your web application. We'll click this. Then we've got a couple of options here that we can actually work with. Now the beauty in this is we're able to simulate what it usually would be in the conventional environment, the whole build phase, and the whole process that we have to go through building. So we can do everything we would do in a classical environment here as well. All right, let's see how this works. So we'll be using code commits. So we're not cloning from GitHub. We can actually use any of these Bitbuckets or GitLab, but we'll be using code commit today. So I'm going to select code commit, click on continue from this. Then we'll look for the repository, which we already have in code commit, obviously, remember from our Cloud9 environment, and which is that. Now the branch is master, pretty much okay. Then because if I fall back here, just to show you, not here, sorry, that would be on the browser here. Okay, great. We can see it's master. So you must be sure that's what you're working with. We'll click on next here. Apologies, seem to be a bit delay. Okay, great. So now is where we need to do a bit of more settings to mimic the environment specific which we want, but there's pretty much nothing difficult here to set up anyways. Okay, so let's create a new role, which is always the best practice, actually using IAM to manage stuff. So we're going to currently there are no roles, so we will be creating a new role. Let's see if there's any refresh this, if there's any existing role. There don't seem to be any role, so we should be able to create a new role. I'm not sure why it's not allowing us to do that. Give me a second. Okay, so I had to refresh and I think everything looks pretty much okay now. So first we will create new environment. For the environment, I think I'm just going to call this production. Then we will create a new IAM role. Maybe that will help us manage this, and that role will be amplified. We'll be using Amplify for the role definition. Then just set up a few stuffs around that. Then we can have that role imported in once we pass that phase. Okay, this is taking a while. I'm just going to pause the recording and get back to it when it's up. Oh, I can see it's up. Great. So if I go right there, we see Amplify. Be sure you're selecting Amplify, and then also check allow EC2 instance to call AWS services on your behalf, and also allow Lambda stuff. So Amplify is what we will be creating as a role. Next, we'll go to permissions. Okay. We won't be doing anything specific here, as well as for the tag. I think the administrator access Amplify is pretty much what we want. Now again, you want to be sure what access policy you have in your environment and enforcing that if needed or if it's required. Check if it is required. The whole concept of whitelist approach is what I always push for in this context. Okay, so I'm going to next to tag. I won't be doing no tagging for this today. I'm just next to review. Then be sure everything here looks okay. Then we can create that role. So once we create that role, we will be able to see the role in our other tab right here. So wait for this to do the population, to populate, sorry. Then we'll go back and select that role which we just created to attach it. Okay, so here goes the role, Amplify console backend role, and that's pretty much okay. So going back here, if we refresh this, now we should see that role right here. So we're going to select that role, which is what we actually applying to this. Then we can either download this if we feel it's necessary, but for this I won't be doing it. Then on advanced, I may have to use a particular version of this because I don't know if the latest is stable, if it's going to give me problem. So I'll work with 7.6.21. let me see if this will work okay without issues. Then I'm going to click next on this. All right, review whatever I've done as a settings. Then I'm going to save and deploy this, so it will start the whole phase. We will watch that phase as it goes from one to another, or to all the way to completion. Then once it's done, we should be able to view that application right on our browser here. It's publicly accessible as well. All right, so I'll get back to you when this is at the phase, maybe just to show you what it looks like. Okay, so we can see the phases: provision, build, deploy, verify. So it's going to go through all this phase, and then once it's done, we will have it accessible via a link here, which we'll actually click to see what it looks like. Then we'll make some changes rapidly in using the Cloud9 here. Then we'll see how fast it is to make a change, and to for this to trigger the pipeline to start the overall phase again to completion. Okay, so we've got completion on the stages. We can see right here, provision, build, deploy, verify, all green, which means we didn't have issues actually whilst we were getting this whole thing to go through the phases. Okay, so if I click on this link here, it should open the application. So we'll see what it looks like. This is a temporal link of domain, which actually is publicly accessible, and we can make changes to this if we want to probably get a domain user 53 or any of those stuff. We can still play around this stuff. So this is what it looks like at the moment. Now we're making some changes to see how rapid it is to make a change, and that pushes all the way to the pipeline. Currently we see the name is Wild Rides. Okay, I'm going to change this name just so I'm able to show you how easy it is to have fun around this stuff. So I'm going to go back to here in my Cloud9 environment, and what I'm going to do basically is make a bit of modification and see how fast that will trigger the pipeline. All right, okay, so let's get into the index.html file and do this. So that should be in public. I'm going to cd into public, and right here there is the index.html. I'll use nano for this task. So I'm going to look for that line of code, which is give me a second, over there. Okay, great, that's the title right there. So let's change this title to Wild Rides. Okay, that makes sense. All right, let's write this output. Sorry, I'm going to have to Control O. Okay, give me a second over there. I'm not sure what's happening to my keyboard. Okay, there seems to be a bit of issue with my extension keyboard, so I'm going to use the keyboard on the laptop. Control X. Okay, save. Yes. All right, that's pretty much the name. Okay, so that's done. Then I'm going to fall back in here. We will see that will trigger this pipeline at some point of that save, of that change being made. All right. Okay, so to trigger the pipeline, we're just going to do the git init. I think the keyboard is back. Oh, sorry, git add first. Right in there. Then we'll do the git commits. Then pass a comment. We'll just call this changed the title page, or the title, not the title page. Then we will do the git push. Then I'll quickly go in here. Let's see if it's going to trigger the pipeline as we're pushing. Okay, pushed was successful. We will wait for this. This might take a while to start the pipeline, but it's supposed to start the job. Okay, so we can see the trigger started, and provision is done, it's building. Then after that, it's going to deploy and verify. Then when we view the link again, we will see that it's going to be different from what we have at the moment. This title is Wild Rides. We'll see our change actually being implemented once that is done. I'm going to close this and wait for this to, oh, where is it? Okay, it should be this one. Wait for this to finish. Okay, so it's done. Now if I click on this link, we will see that the title has changed. Now look at that title, Wild Ride of Your Life. So we can see it's completely different from what it was at the start. Now the next phase will be user management. So user management, we want to see how we can manage authentication to this application. A classical way of doing stuff in AWS would be to use Cognito. So when the user signs up, they can either sign up using their email and password or any other attributes that we configure Cognito to require of them to be able to submit. And once they submit that, then once they create, they have details for the account, then they want to authenticate. If they authenticate, and again it goes through Cognito. I think I have a snapshot of an architecture that I would love to show what it looks like. Okay, great. So look at this. Great. So after they have created the accounts, they authenticate. It goes to Cognito. Then after validation authorization, they receive an identity token, a JSON Web Token, a JWT token, which is what submits as an identity token to the API gateway with which they will be requesting for resources or what doing stuff on the application. So this is what a simple architecture looks like, what we're trying to do here. So enough with this chat or talk or pep talk. All right, so let's get into the business part of this. Again, it's critical that you understand how this works. Now, if the user authenticates either using the email, password, or other verification, they'll be able to sign in. If that authentication is valid, then they authorize, they should be able to do what they are allowed to do or what you've specified that they can do. And when users signed in, they enter their username and password. JavaScript function, the way it's built, the JavaScript function then communicates with the Amazon Cognito, authenticates using the secure remote password protocol, which is the SRP that Amazon actually will be using in this context. Now the receives back a set of JSON Web Token as I've shown you in the architecture, and that's what they use for validation. So let's save us some time. Let's get into the meat. Okay, so we're going to configure Amplify Cli first to allow us to do what we want to do in this context. Now back to my Cloud9, I'll be doing npm install, although I think I installed that from the phase I was actually doing Amplify stuff, but I'm just going to go through. Oh, I got disconnected, pretty bad. Okay, so I'm back on. Now let's take this step by step. First I'll do npm npm install -g. I probably will run another command for this, I'm not sure. Let me see, because I don't know if this will install. Npm -g, that's okay, basically the same thing. I'm using I for install at AWS. Then I will pass amplify, then I will go for the specific version CLI at I want to use for my specification, then I'd use the 7.6.12 or 21. Let's see if this will install. If it does, then we should have everything working fine, but if it fails, we'll see how we can probably move on from there. Okay, the installation completed with a bunch of errors, but again, I'm going to ignore that. If it doesn't work, then I'll try to update this. I won't clear the screen. So what I'm doing next is managing the profile. So you can see around that pretty much AWS profile configuration command. Then went back to the root of this repository, and I'm right in here. I'll run the amplify initialization command. Let's see if this will fail or if it works. If it works, then we'll try to check a version, just play around and see how this works. Okay, so it turned out that it ran fine. All right, so let's pretty much populate this. Again, we're doing prod based on what we set initially. Then it's asking us next to I think we'll work with Visual Studio Code, so we'll just type in Visual Studio Code. I cannot find. Okay, that should be the first one here. I'm just going to copy this. Just being a bit lazy right here, right? Okay. So we'll select that as our default. Oh my god. Okay, so Visual Studio Code. Then again, it's going to do this whole stuff for a while. Wait for this. Then at some point, we'll supply some more data. Then we'll proceed with this process. So next is the select an authentication method. I'll be using the profile since we set that already. I'll just click enter on this. Then again, asking us a few more details. Please choose the profile you want. to use as default. So I think default is pretty much what it's going to be. Then we'll just click on this, then it's going to start the initialization process. Then we'll wait for this to finish and I'll come back to you guys. Okay, so this seems to be concluded. We can do the amplify version just to see what version we have running. We can also run a bunch of this command, as you can see specified here, to see what you want to see: amplify status, add, push. We'll be getting to some of this later. Currently we're running version 7.6.21. Now I chose this version specifically because I had tried building this on a project for client version. The current version, which they have about 8 points, so it's a bit buggy, so it was throwing quite a number of bugs at me, and I wasn't able to get that thing working until I was able to drop down to a lower version, which was this, and this worked perfectly. Although it's advisable you use a more recent version. I'm not sure if they fixed those bugs. I just don't want to go through that. That's why I'm skipping that whole bureaucracy to just running this one. So next we'll be doing the user pool. Now the user pool, Cognito is what we'll be falling to do this. Now Cognito, if you don't know what it is, it's basically that's powerhouse, so that's feature rich user directory service that handles user registration, authentication, account recovery, and a bunch of other stuff that you do in your normal Active Directory and Windows environment space. Okay, so this in AWS is what you find this working out for you. I'm just going to get right at the business. So let's add authentication, and so we'll do the amplify, then we'll do add auth. So let's add authentication. We'll wait for these to carry out the function, then try out stuff that us will understand and analyze what is throwing at us. Then I'll continue with this. So you can see right there we've got the option for using default configuration, which is what we'll be using anyways. Provider configured, the correct configured provider is Amazon Cognito. Okay, pretty much okay. Default configuration is fine. Now you can do default configuration with social providers like Federation or other stuff, or even manual configuration. So, but I'm going to stick with the default configuration here. So I'm just going to click enter. For the do you want to use default authentication? Okay, one and you will be able to. Okay, all right, that's fine. Default is okay by me. For this we'll be using the username. We will use username. Then also we won't do anything like, I think username is pretty much okay to work here. Okay, but we have the options of pushing this thing to wherever we want. Again, you can see I'm using my up or down arrow, but I want to work with username. Then it's asking me, do you want to configure advanced settings? Well, I do not think I want to do this. No, I'm done. All right, this is just a basic demo showing you guys stuff, but if this was a client stuff, I'll go detailed into setting the proper settings or configuring the proper configuration, the way things should be done anyways. Okay, so once again we got a success, and we can see that although with the warning, we can do the amplify status. Let's just see what it's going to try us. We can see right here it's telling us we can either use amplify push, amplify publish, but I'm not going to use amplify to do this because again we might be having issues with duplicates. If I do this, I might suffer the fact that it will create duplicate backend resources, and then that will be costing me money which I do not want, obviously. So I will use the git commands to do this: git add, git commit, then git push to do this. So currently this is what it looks like. The authentication, which we have, took a while. It's wild rides and whatever that resource name is. The operation is you create. The provider is AWS Cloud Formation. So right here in our repo, we will run the command git add. Let's use git to publish this Cognito stuff. Then we'll do git commit. Then we'll pass commit message. We'll call this configure Cognito. That name sounds like Magneto. All right, just kidding. Don't mind me. Okay, then we will git push. Now I'm not going through all the output here because again you can read that, you can understand what it's actually doing. We just created Cognito, so we're trying to use git to push this thing over there. So git push. Now this is the best way to go. Even AWS recommend you go this route than going the route of maybe using the commands amplify publish, amplify push to do this stuff. Okay, so what comes next? Now we have this created, we've got everything working on fine. Let's go ahead and look at the app clients and see how we can manage that. Again, you can see our pipeline has been triggered, so it's going to go through the whole phase again. Then we should have that published in our application. Then we can now start doing some other cool stuff. Okay, so next we'll be doing app client, and I'll be going into the Cognito console here to do this. So I'm just going to go right here. If this is still live or it's dead, I'm not sure. Then let's start up Cognito. So for the app client, we'll go into Cognito just like I've done here. Then right here in Cognito, we'll be using the manage user pool, which is this. We can also do manage identity pool, but for this we created user, so manage user pool. Then right in manage user pool, we should see our what we just created, the authentication we see right there, and also the resource name will be listed. We'll wait for this to load. My internet is a bit slow now. Okay, so we can see our new user pool right there. I'm just going to click on it to open it up, then we'll play around it. So basically this is what the pool looks like. You can see the pool details, required attributes, email. So user would need an email to sign up, username, and you can probably play around, understand the way this thing is. I'm going to leave you to do that. Maximum length of password. Now these are not all hard coded. We can see that we have the opportunity to make changes on any of these. If we feel well, we want beyond this, we want something else, we can actually click on all that and add the required, but I'm not going to do that. As well as the password policy, we can actually make changes to that. So we can see the required length currently is 8. We can set these up to maybe set an expiration dates, only allow administrator to create users, allow users to assign themselves up. Well, this is what you want to do in a public facing application. Obviously you want users to be able to sign up. You don't need an admin to come sign up for them and stuff like that. Okay, great. So I'm going to leave this the way it is. I just want to show you how easy it is in Cognito to specify or build security into what you're doing as a developer. That's the best way to go about stuff like this. So we can clearly see that. We'll just do a few things here, then we'll move on from this page. Okay, so right here in Cognito, we can see app clients. This gives us an idea which app client will have access to your user pool. Currently, this is the app clients. The app client ID is defined here as well. We can show details or we can hide details. So currently we can see the app client secret, no secret key, refresh token expiration, a bit more details, pretty much just want to showcase all that stuff. Again, we can see the current one which you have is this, and this is the app client ID. Now I'm going to fall back to my Cloud9 and show you right in the wide source src file. We've got this Aws Export.js. So this is how Cognito does itself. So it can more or less allow developers to focus on their task, writing code and making modifications to code. It handles this whole stuff automatically. Right here locally, I may not be able to see updates to this file because Cognito, whenever you run that amplify push or maybe git commits, it automatically creates and update this file based on currently the way it is. You can see that file only have my region US East and the AWS mobile definition here. So it is important that you understand how this stuff work in details. Okay, so next let's go create a user and see how we can access our app with the user account which we're going to be creating. All right, so to create a user, we will visit the /auth, which was what we created, the AUTH. Then we will have the login page or the page for us to be able to create a user. So we're going to maybe create an account and seeing how this whole flow works. So this is the app, this is the region where we can create username, password. We can either sign in or maybe create a new account. Okay, all right, so we will create an account. Click on create account. We'll supply a username, a password, and an email address. We also need to supply a phone number, so I'm going to have to start with this. Let me see if this app includes where I'm at the moment. I'm currently in Mozambique. You may be wondering. All right, so we'll see. Then email address. I'm using an email address that is valid. If you use a dummy email, you have to go authorize this in your Cognito dashboard, but I'm using an email address that is valid. We'll use a strong password, very strong one, obviously. Okay, then a username, we will call this. All right, so I'm going to create an account. If all thing works fine, we should of course close this nonsense. All right, never save. So I'm going to go into the Gmail account. So we will get the validation, then we'll take it up from there. Okay, so this dropped in my spam folder. Now, a good way to manage this so that users don't receive verification in the spam or graded as a spam mail will be to maybe use a simple mail or simple email service in Amazon. That's Amazon SES to manage or configure the user pool to use the Amazon simple email service. That's a better approach. But for today, we're not doing that anyways. I'm keeping this pretty simple. So this is the verification code which we receive. So we'll go take this code and go validate to sign into our account. Okay, we'll go submit that code, copy that code and go in here, paste the code, and we confirm. Okay, so we are done with the confirmation process. Now we can sign in, maybe using the username and the password. Let's see if that will pass if we're able to sign in this application. All right, we'll wait for this to load. Okay, so we got this after signing up your auth token. So this page is not functional yet because there is no API invoke URL configured in the src config.js. That's the file which I showed you. You will configure this in module 3. Okay, we will do that in the next module. In the meantime, you would like to test the Amazon Cognito user pool authorizer for your API. Use the if we just want to test, we can use this actually token below to test if it's valid or not. But again, we're not going to be doing that yet. Let's quickly jump into the serverless backend part of this recording. Now for the serverless backend, we will be using an architecture that looks like there is a user that makes a request. Now the request will trigger a Lambda function. Then the Lambda function will communicate with the Dynamodb database and communicate back to the user to return the value with the details the user is specifically asking for. That's how the architecture is going to work here. So quickly, we're going to implement this and take it up from there to the point where we'll set up IAM role and also do some RESTful API stuff. Right, so what we'll be doing now is we'll be using the Amazon Dynamodb console to create a Dynamodb table. We will call this table a name, and also we'll give it a partition key ID, which we'll be using actually to call for this. All right, so let's jump right into this. I'm going to go into Dynamodb. All right, so let's create a table. So right here in the Dynamodb console, we'll create a table, and we will give this table a name. Then we'll set a bit of attributes. So the table name will be right. Then the partition key, we'll set the partition key specifically with that name also, right ID. That should be it. This is case sensitive, please, you should note that. Then the key will be string. Now we have the option for binary numbers, obviously, but we'll stick to string in this context. So if this is done, we also have a sort key, which is optional, but we're not going to be using that. We'll just ignore that, and we'll leave everything the way it is. Then we will go ahead and create this table. All right. Okay, there we go. Our table creation process is ongoing. We'll wait for this to finish, then we'll move on to managing IAM in the next phase. So we can see it's done. now the next phase will be to use IAM to manage Lambda function. Obviously, we do know that every Lambda function has an IAM role that enables the function to be able to communicate with other services within our AWS infrastructure. So we will be setting that role to specifically allow or tell the Lambda function, what to do and what not to do, or what to be able to access and what not to be able to access, which is always the way to go. Fine-grained access policy, remember. Okay, so back in IAM, we will create a new role. We have these roles already in there from the previous task which we've completed. We can see there's Amplify while rides, there's the Amplify console backend. We will create a new one for Lambda. So we're going to click on create role. Seems to be a delay. Okay, great. We will create a role specifically for Lambda. Okay, so we can see allow AWS services like EC2 Lambda or other to perform action. Now you have other options, but I think I'm sticking with the first one for service. Okay, great. In this context, it's going to be Lambda. Okay, then we can use case for other AWS service. Obviously, we've seen the options here that we have. That's one pretty unique stuff about AWS, right? Anyways, I'm just AWS guy. So we move on. Now it is clear that you understand the common use case here anyways, but it's not restrictive again. So click on next. Now I'm going to search for specific permission, the AWS Lambda basic execution role policy stuff. I'm just going to paste what I have in my clipboard here and search for this because I'm trying to be specific here, which is this. Okay, well, again, this is pretty much easy for you to set up all the permission policy if you want, but you want to be very sure what you're doing. Because excessive permission is not good permission. Right, great. So permission boundary, we also have this flexibility, and I like that actually. Create role without permission boundary. Use the permission boundary to control the maximum role permission. Very necessary. I'm laughing because I've actually seen stuff doing pen testing. Okay, so next we will just review this, give it a role name, and then we should be good to go. I'm not going to tag this resource today, so I'm going to give it a role name, a defined role name that will be easy for me to actually use as a way to call this whenever I want to fetch it. Again, be sure of whatever you're doing. Okay, allow Lambda function to call AWS service on your behalf. That's the description we chose. Okay, then we can look at the pretty JSON stuff here, understand what it's doing. Okay, the effect is allow, the action is assume role, the principal is Lambda AWS, Amazon AWS.com. Okay, pretty much important to know that service. All right, then we can see the options for adding permissions, which we already did. Then tagging we're not doing. We're just going to create this role and get the hell out of this space. All right, to the next part, which will be the Lambda. So the next task will be to add a permission to allow this role access our Dynamodb table. So I'm going to click on this role here, which is a wild rides Lambda. Then within some inline permissions on this role. So right here in the permission tab, we can see the options to add permission attach policy. Okay, so we will review this. Currently this is what it is. We can set permission boundary again. We can generate policy like I told you from the start. Okay, so it's always good to review whatever you're doing before you proceed actually. Okay, so with the new interface, we will be creating inline policy, which is what it is right here. I'm going to click on that. Wait for it to redirect me to that link. Then we will be creating inline policy right on the fly to be able to help us manage access to the Dynamodb table. So next on this, we will be choosing a service which we want, and I think Dynamodb is what we're just going to look for. So I'm going to click on choose a service. We will search for Dynamodb. Okay, can't believe I'm not typing it. There's a bit of delay over there. All right, I'm just gonna pause and wait for this thing to load. Okay, it's back. Dynamodb. All right, so we will select Dynamodb, which is what we want in this context. Okay. Yeah, there is a delay. Well, So we can see right on our service, we've got Dynamodb as the option. Oh my gosh. Select the service below. I'm not sure what happened there. Okay, I'm going to select that again. Then the action. So we will look at the action, which is what comes next. Now for the action, we will be starting with put item. I think that should be pretty much what we have to do in this context. So let's see, this is our action. Now remember, we need to grant Lambda access to be able to do stuff, to carry out actions on our Dynamodb. So that's what we're pretty much doing here in this part of the recording. Okay, so we're going to go select the Amazon resource name, the ARN for the table which we created here, which is this table. And then we'll take it over there to be able to paste it in there, because we'll be using that actually to specify. Okay, I'm just going to look around here and find the ARN for this resource. Okay, so that's the ARN right there. I'm going to copy this, then go back to our settings here. So resource, we'll click on this so we can actually add resource to this stuff. So let's add the ARN. Right here we can see add the ARN. We'll click on this. The region, we will specify the region, but again remember, we need to be sure what we're doing here. The table name, I already have it copied. I'm just going to paste this in here. Maybe I would set this for any region, but again I think I want to stick to the default region that I've been working with, so I can manage whatever I'm doing. Okay, so we got it all working out. We can see the ARN for the table, which was copied, and we can see the account and the table name is right. All right, so just a quick verification. Always good practice to verify what we're doing. This is the table name right. All right, so I'm going to go back here and add this. Then moving on, we have the request condition session. We will look at that and see what we can do in there. So we have the option for request conditions again, streamlining security here. We can either specify MFA or do the source IP, or even add other conditions, maybe just to showcase what this looks like. We've got the option to add any of these conditions, qualifier, operator, or value. So I'm going to cancel this review policy, and we'll give this a policy name. I'm just going to give it a name, Dynamodb write access. And that's pretty much what we have to do here. Then we can go ahead and create this policy. Okay, so let's create the policy. So the next part of this after the policy will be to go create the Lambda function. So the Lambda function, basically, as we know, Lambda actually runs code in response to an event, more like a trigger, as an HTTP request. So in this, usually you will see you build a function that processes API, for instance, requests from a web application to dispatch maybe stuff. Now, what we'll be doing is using the Amazon API gateway, which it's also another very powerful stuff. We'll create a RESTful API that exposes HTTP endpoints. Then we can actually invoke from a user's browser or user browser. Then we can connect the Lambda function we created in this step to the API to create a fully functional or a fully fledged back-end for our web application. Now that's pretty much important to understand how stuff like that work, because in a normal business environment, you have front-end, you have back-end for these applications, then you also have a bunch of API calls that hits that application. So you want to effectively manage all that. I think that's where an Amazon tool like the API gateway shines pretty much smooth. Okay, I think I have a video. Okay, I did not record that video yet on the API gateway. I will do that maybe later. All right, so let's go get into this and see how it works. Okay, going to the process of creating a Lambda function, we will create a new function and we'll just go through the walkthrough. Okay, now we can author from scratch, which is obviously what we're doing. We can use a blueprint, or we can even use a container image or browse serverless app repository. So we'll be going the first way, author from scratch. We want to do this stuff from scratch. We'll give it a name. I'll give it the name. I think I've got a name in my tab. Okay, now the environment, I'm going to we can use pretty much 14 Node.js 14 times or 14 version upward, or we can check for specific versions. I'm going to be using the 12 in this context. For the architecture, I'm going to just remain with the x64, x86, x64, not the ARM. Now for the permissions, we will expand and make a few changes under the permissions. Okay, we'll check the default execution role. We can either create a new role with Lambda permission, or we use existing. We have something which we've created, and I think that's what we're going to look for, and that's what we'll be using, which is the wide right Lambda. Remember that stuff. That's it over there. We'll select that. Now we've got the advanced option. We can enable code signing based on your environment. We can enable function URL. Best practice, you want to enable code signing at least variable minimum. Tag is your option. It can also enable VPC, which means we'll be restricting this to only specific VPC zones. Okay, great. So let's move on with this task. So next we click the create function and wait for this to create the function for us. All right, so we've got a Lambda function successfully created, the request unicorn function. Then we will make a bit of changes in the code. So right in this code, this is the default code. I'm going to replace this with, okay, copied my code and I have that replaced in there. So pretty much look up the way it works. We can see the construct. We'll understand what is happening. Required crypto SDK, then define other attributes, the name, color, gender, just random stuff based on the request that will be hitting this stuff or triggering this function specific. Okay, so after that, next we can review and then click on deploy. So we can test this. We have the options for testing this. We have the option for deploying this. Best approach. You want to run a test first. Okay, then you deploy. But again, I'm just going to click on deploy for this stuff, saving me some time. So let's go validate our implementation. So let's run a test. Right here, we'll create a new event for the test. I'm just going to replace this with a code for my tests. Okay, I'll come back to that. Now, what we're trying to do is basically trying to see if we can run a test on what we've just done. And we're creating a new test or creating a new event, following the templates. Then we can give this an event name. We're just going to call this test request event basic name. Okay, then we have this working out. Event sharing settings, we can leave this private, or we can maybe go shareable. Private, this event is only available in Lambda console. Obviously, that's what we want to do, best practice here. Okay, so this is the hello world stuff. We can look at what it's doing. The path is going to the right. Okay, HTTP method is post, then the headers accept / okay, basically, okay, that's the road path. Authorization, we've set an authorization value or token. Then the content type of application JSON. Then the string query string parameter, nothing is specified there, all the way to the cognito username. So the username will be specifying here for this test case. Okay, all right, let's run this test. I'm going to make sure this is selected. Then we will click on test. So it's going to execute a test and give us a feedback in this execution results. So my execution results, you can see the 201 status code over there, which means we also actually have that access control origin, which is the steric wildcard. Everything which we ran seemed to work fine. 201 return, and validation over here, the request ID as well. Then a bit of report showing what our test has been able to execute. Well, this is a good way to validate on the fly whatever you've done, if it's actually good or it's bad. So right here on the fly, I can see we're pretty much okay from the result returned from our test, and we can move on from this phase because we just built the Lambda function, which you can see in the index.js here, and we run a test and it is okay. All right, next phase will be to get on the RESTful API using the API manager in AWS. All right, the next task will be to use the API gateway to expose the Lambda function which we built. as a RESTful API. So this is the way to go. Now the API will be accessible on the public over the internet. Yes, that's what we're trying to do. It will be also secure using the Amazon Cognito user which you've created. So you see the way we've built this stuff, putting security at the heart or the core of whatever we're doing. Okay, then we also assign roles and restriction in that definition. Now using this configuration, we will turn our statically hosted web application into a dynamic web. Basically, the whole idea is we're adding a client-side JavaScript to make Ajax call. Again, pretty much good stuff to work with in that learning curve for you guys. So the architecture will look like we've got the web browser making the dynamic API calls over HTTPS. Remember, this is over HTTPS. Then the Amazon API gateway being that guy who sits there and say, okay, yeah, you want to talk with who? Send over to me, then validates. We can pretty much go fine grain setting security in the API gateway as to looking out for specific formats for the API calls that we're getting, the particular verbs that are allowed, then setting restriction to what we want these to be able to do for us. Now the API gateway will relay that to the AWS Lambda, which triggers the function as an event coming in, triggers the function, then goes over to the Dynamodb to carry out an operation, which is the way this is going to work. All right, I'm pretty much excited about this. Let's get into this. All right, so right here in the API gateway console, which is what we're using, we will go over to the REST API. We have the option for private, which means we'll be using VPC to control access to this. So let's click on build. We can as well import if we have something somewhere actually. So click on build, wait for this to load. Then we'll be creating a new API from scratch. So we have to remove whatever is in the templates that had been generated automatically. This takes a while, my internet is slow a bit. Okay, so we have it right here, and just a bit of understanding the way these docs work. We can see the example API, but we'll be doing the new API. Okay, we have the option for WebSockets. So if you don't understand WebSockets in the context, maybe it would be good for me to do a bit of explanation. You want to have dynamic, which is not what like a static thing does, just one way in. You want to have, let's say you're building maybe a gamified bot that should be able to communicate two ways. You want to use WebSockets. Let's say you're building like maybe an app that should be, do not always need to wait for a call, can always go the other way around, then WebSocket is what you want to use. But for our case, the REST API is pretty much okay for us, so we'll go with that. Then we'll enter a name for the API. We'll give it maybe the wild right, which is the name we've been working with. Then we will be going regional. Now we can do edge, private, the three types that AWS actually provides here for the endpoint. So we'll be going with regional. We're pretty much okay with that. All right, so we create the API. Then the next phase to that, okay, wait for that to populate. Once this is done, we will go on and set up Cognito way forward again, Cognito to help us do stuff in management. So let's set up an authorizer for our newly created API. So we'll go over authorizer. Then from authorizer, we'll just create a new authorizer. Under the new authorizer, we'll give it a name. So the name will just remain what we've been using. Wild rights. Now we have the option to use a Lambda or Cognito. Again, I want to use Cognito. Then under Cognito, I see I already have something, the user pool which we've created. That's why I'm using Cognito. So I'm going to select this. Then the token source, token validation, we can set that as we wish. The token source, I'm going to give it a name authorization. Okay, the token validation, I will leave that blank. Then I'll just go ahead and create this stuff. So let's run a test. All right, remember the last time we tried to sign in, we got this authorization thing over here, right? So I'm going to copy this. I hope I'm copying everything. All right, great, that's it. I'm going to copy this. Then I'm going to go back in my API. I'll run a basic test. Let's see, let's paste this authorization header and run a test and see what happens if this goes through. Okay, response code 200, so it means we're good to go, right? All right, we can see the authentication time, the Cognito username, blessedly which you created, the email verified true, event ID. Just go through the process. We can see everything which we set, and it means we're good to go. Anyways, if you don't get that, it means probably you've missed something somewhere. You want to be sure you see that 200 response code, meaning it's okay. Latency is pretty much fine. For me, 139 milliseconds, who cares? It's just a test environment. Okay, so next will be to do the API resource, then we'll deploy. All right, let's move on to the next phase. We got that test passed. We've got everything okay here. So API resource will be the next phase. So right here on the same API gateway page, we can see the resources. I click on resources. Then right here under resources, we will try and simulate an action. So we will see what we have right here at the moment. If I click on action, we can create method, we can enable cross-origin resource sharing, we can enable resource documentation. We will just go through the process to creating that resource which we want to do. So we're going to create a resource right here. Create a resource. Then we'll give it a resource name. We'll have the option to configure as a proxy resource, but we'll just give it a resource name, right? Then the path is right. Be sure the path is correct. Okay, now we're going to enable API gateway CURS. So you may be wondering, CURS, why doing that? Cross-origin resource sharing. It's very necessary that you actually enable that, so we can have that resource being passed on back and forth with the API gateway. Okay, so pretty much okay, there are quite a number of detailed settings you can do on this API gateway stuff, which makes it really handy to manage APIs. And I recommend, if you're not using this, you have resources in AWS making API calls, then you should be doing that anyways. So let's create the resource. So next we're going to create a method, and we'll be using the post method. So if I go right here, create a method, we'll select a post method. We have the options to use it, either delete any get, head, patch, post, puts. Post will be specific here. Remember, you want to be specific. So we'll click on the post method, then we'll just click on the check mark, and that will go ahead and do its stuff. Okay, so we see authorization, created post. We have all that stuff pretty much set up. Now the Lambda region is specific, US East 1. I'm restricting this again. Remember, you have to be able to do that actually. So let's streamline stuff more on this particular page. We're using Lambda function, okay, for this method. Then we're using Lambda proxy integration. You need to select that. The Lambda region, yes, US East 1. And then the Lambda function which we created in the previous Lambda environment, which is this. Then use default timeouts. Anyways, we can actually set default timeout, or we can leave this without setting it, but I'm going to just set default timeout. Then I'm going to save this. Okay, you're about to give API gateway permission to invoke a Lambda function. I'm pretty much okay with that. I'm aware of what I'm doing. All right, great. So select that. Okay, still moving on with the setup. We will select the request method right here. Then from the authorizer, we'll make a bit of changes. We'll be going for the cognito user which you've created, remember. So it's the wide rights cognito user which you've created, which is this. Now we can do either AWS IAM user to manage this as well, but we're sticking with the rights, wide rights which you've created, and be sure that is selected. The request validator, it's not necessary, we can leave that. Then the API key required, we can also leave that as false for this particular demo. Now the next phase will be to deploy this thing. All right, so the final phase, deploying this stuff. It's been a while, right? So click on that action, then we'll choose deploy API on that is. So let's deploy the API. Now the development stage environment, we'll just do a bit of settings here, right here. There seem to be nothing throwing up, I'm not sure. Okay, we may not be able to do this. Let's go check in the background. Okay, it seems to be internet issue. All right, so we're going to create a new stage. We'll give it a stage name, maybe prod, probably. Prod should be pretty much fine at this point. Then the stage description, anyways, is it necessary? Is not. We can just fill up this stuff as we deem fit. Okay, so we've gone through all that phase, and we've got an invoke URL, which will be the URL uniform resource locator to invoke this stuff. All right, we'll take this over and update the config file, then we should be good to go as the final phase of this project. Hey, over to the final phase. It's been a while. Okay. All right, so let's go back to our Cloud9 environment. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Let's hope this reconnects back. If it doesn't, it's fine. We'll just start from where we left off. Okay, so let's update the config.js file. We can see it right there. I'm going to use Nano to do this. Okay, I'm going to have to change the invoke URL. So I'll go over to my, I hope this doesn't go out of function. So I'm going to go over here and copy this, which is what it looks like now, and go back in this tab and update that right here. So we'll update this, then we'll save this change, then we should be good to go. Okay, so let's go over to the invoke URL and just remove, sorry, that's a comment. I don't need to remove it. I just need to paste it in between these quotes. Okay, and we should be good to go. All right, so we'll save this as an output, then we'll run our git add, then we'll run our git commit, then git push, and once the pipeline build is done, we should be okay. So let's save this out. Again, my keyboard is going crazy. I'm doing it in the background and I'll come back to you guys. All right, so we've got this saved. Now let's run the git add source. We do git add, and we're adding specifically, and now I'm already in the directory, and I can just do a dot, but just to show you if you're not, you can do the src, then go to the specific file config.js. What the hell? Tab. I don't know what the hell is wrong with this thing. Could not open directory. Oh man, my bad. Okay. Okay, gits. Enough with this shitty stuff. I think I'm in the directory where, okay, let me try if this is gonna work. Okay, that works fine. So I'm gonna run the git commits, then we'll put a commit message here. We'll just say configured API invoke URL. Okay, then we'll git push. So we will go and watch the pipeline. Once this push is done, we'll go watch the pipeline, which should be right over here. Then once it's done, we will now do our test, the basic test, just to see validation if this works pretty fine. Okay, come back to you guys. Okay, so where we can see provision is done, build phase is on, after which deploy and verify. Then we'll run some tests just to validate what we've done is okay. Okay, so our pipeline is done. We're just going to go and verify this right here. All right, so I'm going to refresh this page again to see what happens this time around when we try to log in. Okay, this might take a while. Okay, while that is loading, I can just probably be talking. Well, I will stop this video here. If you want me to do a video to showcase the cleanup, please, you can leave a comment, because you don't want to incur charges at the end of the month. I can walk you through how to clean up everything we've done, and that will be pretty much okay for you to work with. All right. Okay, so we've been able to log in. Now I'm just going to select anywhere on the map, if I'm allowed to. The map is not loading correctly. So I just did. I can request a unicorn to trigger that API. Then we'll just watch the way this stuff turns out to be. All right, so we can see this stuff worked fine. The unicorn flew to where I selected. We could simulate this again, maybe just pick anywhere else if I'm able to do that. But you can see, okay, I just picked somewhere else. So let's request a unicorn, and I'm not going to pause the video so we can see the location. Then we'll watch the unicorn flee all the way to the location we've selected. Okay, so means this stuff is working the way we expect it. All right, that's where I'm gonna wrap this video. The unicorn is now at the new location we selected. Well, little disclaimer, I did not write the code for this stuff. I must stress on that now. Okay, I got this from one of the AWS web app workshop, serverless web app workshop. I'm doing a video to show walk through how to build this from scratch to the point where integrating this with API and having all that security in mind when you're doing this stuff. So again, I'm going to stop this recording here. Thanks for your time. I hope you're able to stick around the 1 hour 9 minutes to watch the whole content. But if you do, good. If you don't, it's okay. If you want me to do a video for the clearing, let me know. I'll do that. Thanks, and have a good day. Go build serverless. Yeah. Bye bye.